This is the Pivotal Running Podcast, and you're listening to Greg Derbyshire,
Chris Gruenhagen,
and Marty Wimblom.
And we are three jackrabbits from two different countries who continue to follow running in the upper Midwest.
And we want to discuss important topics, inspiring stories, and extraordinary performances in running. Welcome back to the Pivotal Running Podcast. I'm Marty Wimblom, and with me is my co-host, Greg Derbyshire, joining us from Auckland, New Zealand. How's it going, mate?
Good, Marty. How are you today?
Doing great. You had the South Dakota State track and field meet here, all separated in three different locations. That's why Chris Gruenhagen is not able to join us. He's actually on a bus right now, headed to Brookings with his team. So
he is following this. He's told us, so we can keep him updated on how our podcast is going today.
And we'll get a full report from him and the rest of the squad from the state meet here. Well, today we have the honor and privilege to talk with a South Dakota running legend, Mike Dunlap. From being one of the worst runners at the very first running camp at South Dakota State University in 1972 to becoming a South Dakota State A cross-country champion in 1974, Mike was a 4-year varsity runner at SDSU from 1975 to 1978. Mike was the SDSU 10,000 meter record holder at 30:29 and Howard Wood Relay's 1,500 meter champion in 1979. After college, Mike signed a professional contract with the Brooks running team and qualified for 2 Olympic marathon trials in 1980 and 1984. He holds an impressive marathon PR of 2:18:26 and is best friends with Dick Beardsley, his 1978 SDSU teammate. Mike's got many running stories. Mike, thanks so much for joining us today. Would you like to tell us how your running and cycling and lifelong pursuit of healthy living got started?
Well, first, before I do that, I want to thank you guys for this opportunity. It's really an honor for me. And I'm just super pumped for what you're providing to runners in the Midwest, the state of South Dakota, basically to anyone who wants to listen in. I always am amazed how we try to overcomplicate things in life and make it harder than, training is hard work, but I like let's get down to the basics. Let's get the principles. Let's get that foundation. And I think that's kind of where your guys' focus is to kind of get people to say this. I like that demystifying running. And that kind of led into what got me started was I knew nothing about running. I was a farm kid. I grew up on a farm, a dairy farm, and I went to a one-room country school. If you ever watched Little House on the Prairie with Laura Ingalls Wilder, I can understand and relate to that show because one teacher had all 8 grades. It was like a family. It was a great, great thing. I was the only 7th grader. I was the valedictorian of my class. I was a 7th grader. So little country schools. Finally, the state of South Dakota, I think that they just couldn't afford to have all these little schools, and they consolidated. And I got bused to Lennox, South Dakota, about 14 miles actually. And I went from a class of 1 to a class of 140, and that was kind of culture shock. Going from the farm kid. Now I was hanging out with these city kids, and they were good at sports. I had never played basketball, baseball. I didn't know what track and field was, but I hope high school kids listen to this. I hope some coaches listen to this. What everybody's looking for is acceptance, just to fit in. I just want to be part of the group and feel, that level of acceptance. You call it love if you want to, by others. And, I was able to make some connections with some kids that were into athletics. And my best friend was really good. He was a sprinter, believe it or not. And I actually went out for football. I didn't know, I knew about football, and he kind of took me under his wing. He said, we're going to play football as 9th graders. I said, awesome. I saw football on TV. I went out. I actually was a pretty decent football player. I was a starting halfback, defensive halfback. I wasn't afraid. I told myself on day one, don't be afraid. To stick your nose in there, do what the coaches say and all this. And the training was brutal. I went from 0 to like double days at hell week they do in football. I could barely move, about halfway through that, and survived it. And played football as 9th grader and actually enjoyed, the experience because I was with teammates and guys who were backing each other up. We all had each other's back. Everybody was supporting each other. And that was cool to be part of that group. I didn't appreciate the coaching style of football coaches. A lot of yelling, lot of yelling, no matter how good you thought you did, they'd always find something they thought you could have done better. And so, I guess that was just part of the deal. But football ended, and I was not good at basketball. You know that pretty quick. But my best friend, the sprinter, said, well, we're going out for track in the spring because that would get us ready for football in the fall. And it's like, okay, when somebody asks you, or he didn't ask me, he told me, we're going to do this. And again, that was that level of acceptance. I was part of the group, and he just said, this is what we're going to do to be better. And I said, cool. And so I didn't know what track. I knew it was running and jumping. And coach figured out, Coach Gene Borman was my coach. And day one, they basically line you up and go, we're going to run from here to there, go. And the first one's down there. Well, there was 100-meter guys. And my friend was like the first one there. I was like middle of the packer. I wasn't the fastest, but I wasn't I beat the shot putters, I guess, and stuff like that. So I wasn't really naturally gifted with like speed. And so, first race come around, guess what they put me in? The mile. The mile, that was kind of the catch-all. We'll just kind of throw you in there and see how you survive it. And the training in these days, we're talking 1971, the spring of 71. And I bless my coach's heart. I love him to death, super motivated, nice guy, would give you the shirt off his back. Training was basically like a mile run to the track. We do 4 quarters all out with pretty much full recovery, and then a mile back to the high school. So, and it's like, all right, we did it. And those 4 quarters are really painful. Running, we didn't know how to pace ourselves. Running 400 meters as fast as you can. You feel like you're going to puke at the end. And then as soon as you didn't, he'd say, well, okay, you guys ready to do it again? And it was this interval based, not a lot of intervals either, but it kind of got us through. And I went to my first mile was gruesome. We probably went out at like 65. I don't remember it, but it was just that excitement and everybody doesn't know what they're doing. So you just go, and then the second lap reality, sets in, and the third lap, you're beginning to wonder why I'm even doing this. And the fourth lap, I don't remember at all. And I got done, and I just remember I wasn't last. And I do remember teammates cheering, that was cool. They were out there yelling for us. And I was bent over, trying not to pass out, trying to breathe, had my hands on my knees. And Coach Borman came up, and this is a pivotal moment. I love the name of this pivotal. You have pivotal moments. This is a pivotal moment for me. He put his hand on the small of my back, and he kind of didn't whisper, but he softly said, nice job. He said, you ran 5:26, and that's really good for a 9th grader, your first time out. You've got potential. He might as well have told me I just won the lottery, because that was like music to a young guy's ears. Here's your acceptance from a coach, positive reinforcement. And, next week when he said, who wants to run the mile, my hand went up. And I always tell, I worked my way. I wanted to break 5 minutes. 5 minutes is like, wow, that's a barrier. That'd be cool. I ran 5:11, 5:11, 5:11. I ran 3 5:11s in a row. Talk about physiological.
That's good.
And
wow.
The coach was very supportive, and but the training was not. I don't even remember the training, but it's pretty archaic. And ended that season, and I just thought I really enjoyed that experience. And I went to Coach Borman and I said, Coach, I think I'm going to come out for cross country. I knew that it was running farther. And I said, I think I'd like to run cross country next fall. And, he was kind of shocked by that. And he goes, oh, okay. I said, you're not a bad football player, Mike. And Coach Borman was a smaller guy. He said, I always wanted to play football. And he'll die if he watches this, but he kind of tried to talk me out of running cross country because you're not a bad football player. Look at me, where would I have ended up as a career as an NFL player? Probably, and I always kind of laughed. He kind of tried to say, look, if you could probably play football and be a varsity football player if you wanted to be. And I said, no, I really enjoy running. And he goes, oh, that's fine. It's up to you. But he wasn't like forcing me to do anything. And I really appreciate, I was kind of thought he'd like welcome me with open arms because I think they had a hard time getting more than about 8 guys out for cross country. But I knew I loved running. I liked the positive. I liked the team aspect. And so I happened to just open the Sioux Falls Argus Leader early that summer. And here was a small ad, cross country camp, SDSU. It was $90 for a week, room and board, coaching. And, pivotal moments. I went to my folks. I said, can I do this? I didn't know what I was getting into, but I knew this sounded like something I should do. And my folks, I got to give them 100% credit. They did not understand running. They were, kids of the Depression and hardworking people. Always, if something like this, they said, Yes. And I was just blown away. They didn't, like, why would you want to, they didn't discuss it. It was like, if you want to do it, you can do it. And I went up there just super excited. And if Bob Bartley mentioned it, I saw his podcast, and you will not believe it, that we're talking now the summer of 72 and the Munich Olympics were on. We watched we watched Frank Shorter run the 10K. We saw Lassie Byrne fall in the 10K and get up and come back and win the race. I mean, we were at the running camp for all this, and we'd watch it in the evening. Jay had us running 4 times a day, 5 miles a run. I went from like 2 miles a day to 20 miles a day. I could barely walk after about the second day. It was insane. But that was, you got to remember, we're talking Jay Dirksen now, marathoner extraordinaire. And he was an Ironman. And I think part of the thing was too, he wanted to keep us so tired we wouldn't get in trouble. We'd go for a run, we'd go to a class session, we would lay on our bunk beds at the dorm. I think we were in Brown Hall, if I remember right, or something. And we would just lay there waiting for the next run because we had to, you were just so tired and wasted. And we survived the week. I remember at blisters, we were running in canvas tennis shoes and stuff. And we finished the week on Saturday morning and I told Marty this story a while ago about Jane Whiff, who went on to be a 2:36 marathoner from Freeman, South Dakota, was at the camp. The only girl. We had like 14 guys, 1 girl. She slept in a dorm all by herself. We had to respect. They had there wasn't going to be any, controversy there. And Jane Whiff just drilled me in that 3 mile, the last day of camp. I mean, we were all so tired, but and that dented my ego. I remember getting beat by a girl. And knowing who she is and how good she was, and she was so nice, but everybody was so encouraging. At the end of that 3 mile, high fives. We didn't fist bump back in those days. It was shaking hands. It was the coaches that were there. Everybody was acknowledged for their effort, and nobody said anything about, gee, some girl. No, there was none of that. It was everybody was there, and that was really cool. We had Rich Greeno, we had Lyle Clausen. We had Jay Dirksen. We had Russ Stranding. You talk about a group of Hall of Fame coaches. Those are the camp staff. And those guys set the example for us. They really showed us what a running lifestyle was all about for a week. I mean, we were like sponges soaking it up. I remember about the second or third day, a bunch of these old geezers showed up. They were like 45 years old. And they came to run with us. I thought they were old, 45-year-old to a 14, 15-year-old looks like an old geezer. It was Bob Bartley. It was Bob, and it was a bunch of, and of course, Keith Morrill. These were professors. Dr. Scotty Roberts, he showed up. They'd come in the evenings after work, and they heard this camp was going on. And Jay would tell them, yeah, come on over and listen, come run with the kids, come run. And it was so cool to have these old guys running, because I never, my folks didn't run. I never saw any adult run. I mean, and so that was opened up our eyes. Like, man, there's a whole world out there of this. Came back, ran cross country as a sophomore, and I was number 2 runner. And the senior on our team, he was a really good runner, Laurent Clark. And Laurent, and again, so supportive. I wanted to beat him so bad because, to be number 1 on your team is kind of like, that's something to talk about. I wanted a Letterman's jacket. That was, you had these goals that were important to kids, to youth. And Laurent, even though I wanted to beat him, he knew I wanted to beat him, and he wasn't going to let me. And we would duel in workouts. We would duel in races. He always beat me. And that drove me, though, because it's like, dang it, I want to. And it was a friendly rivalry, and no animosity whatsoever, never any anger, anything like that. But I could tell in races, he'd be looking over his shoulder to see where Mike was, and I was back there just training as hard as I could to try to catch up with Laurent. And so that really helped fuel us. And this kind of goes on into college as well, going to SDSU, because if we feed off each other, what's that? One man strengthens the other, steel sharpens steel, that sort of thing. And survived, went through cross country, ran track that spring. And I really don't remember much about track. I wanted to make the 2 mile relay, and we had a pretty good 2 mile relay. And I got my half down to like 2:12 or something as a sophomore, and it wasn't good enough. You're not going to make the varsity relay, unless you're down there around 2:04, 2:05, back in those days. And I just couldn't do that breakthrough. And went off that summer and went to the state AAU track meet. And Lyle Clausen was there. I remember Lyle kind of took me under his wing, and I ran a 4:48 mile that summer as a sophomore. You remember these times, and came back, went to the running camp. Only had to run 15 miles a day this year. I think the coaches told Jay, look, we're gonna get nobody talks about getting sued. We're gonna kill somebody out here running these high school kids 20 miles a day. Let's cut it back to 15 miles a day. And that seemed like heaven, after that first week. I still have, and if you guys go, I don't believe you. I still kept the agendas. Jay was the most organized man you ever met in your life. He gave you, here's the week schedule. He did the same thing in college. Here's our cross-country season schedule. These are the workouts you're going to be doing. It didn't matter what the weather was. It didn't matter how you were feeling. That's the workout that was going to be done that day. And so he was very programmed that way. And so I still kept that. So I have evidence. But anyway, survived the second camp, came back, was number one runner my junior year. Laurent had graduated, went to SDSU, by the way, and won my first race, a dual meet against Brandon Valley. And, you set little goals. I wanted a Letterman's jacket. I got that as a sophomore. I wanted to beat Laurent, didn't do it. My goal then was to win a race. And I won my first race. It was a duel. And man, the feeling you get when you cross the finish line first, it's really one of those things until you've done it. If you could bottle it, you could make a fortune. People would be paying any price for that. And that just motivates you more. And had a really good season. I love training in the summer, the heat of the summer. I trained on grass and gravel. I was always healthy. And then went to the regional meet, and Randy Fisher he won. I met Randy. I go to developmental track meets throughout the summer. Rich Greeno would put on track meets every Wednesday night. They were free. This is the greatest thing ever. And you just show up, and you'd go over and they'd have a piece of paper, the mile, and you'd write your name on it. And it'd have what time you're going to run. And what time the event was going to be. Go warm up, be back at work. And we'd enter the half, we'd enter the mile. I think the mile was the longest event you could do. They didn't have a 2 mile or anything like that. And we cut our teeth every week. And I met Randy at one of these meets where he saw I had a Lennox singlet on, and he thought I was Laurent Clark. He had heard of this kid from Lennox. Laurent ran 4:38 in a mile as a senior. And he came up to me and he goes, "Hey, excuse me, are you from Lennox?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Are you Laurent Clark?" Because he was worried. He was worried that Laurent was there. And I said, no, my name's Mike. And Laurent's my teammate. And he goes, "Oh, okay." So, and Randy was a really good runner. And we ran, and I know he beat me. He was a year ahead of me. And afterwards, he said, "You want to go for like a cool down run?" And again, that acceptance, and so anybody listen to this, if you ever have the opportunity, your competitors you could be teammates, except you happen to be living in a different area or a different town or whatever. And Randy said, "You want to go for a cool down run?" I said, "Yeah, sure. I do." I was going to do it anyway. And so we went for a run and just, bannering, talking about whatever high school boys talk about. Well, we, raced each other then. He was a senior when I was a junior, and he always would beat me, but I would be close. At a regional meet, he won. I got second, about 10 seconds behind him. And so I was really looking forward to the state meet. I should mention as a sophomore, I finished 54th at Class A in the state meet, in Class A, cross country. And so I was thinking this year, man, I'm so much better shape. And I'm finishing second to Randy pretty much all the races. He's one of the favorites. I'm thinking top 10. And maybe on a good day, top 5. You kind of have those goals. And the race took off. Randy ended up second. I really felt bad for him. I was hoping he'd win, a kid from way out west. You never saw these people till the state meet, and you didn't know who you were coming up against. That was the Shanangle Butte, the Todd County guys. You never raced them until the state meet. And so you really didn't know who was going to get off that bus. And Randy got second. I ended up 20th. And, talk about a pivotal moment. I was I hate to use the word devastated because it's just a race, dude, get over it. But I was very disappointed. So subpar what I thought, thinking top 10 for sure, maybe top 5, and not even to finish in the medals. 15 people get medals. Finished outside that. And, life lesson, don't count your chickens before they're hatched, and things, why that happened, I don't know. And there's 2 ways you could look at it and give up and say, well, I guess this isn't for me, or train harder, and obviously that was my thought is this ticks me off. And don't remember much about my track season. Do you hear a trend here more about cross country is kind of the love of our lives? Because for some reason, training for track in the winter of South Dakota is just borderline insanity. And our track season was so short, and it usually was terrible weather. And so, if you said back, well, tell us about your favorite track events in high school. Yeah, I might have 1 or 2 I could mention, but not many. Cross country was a thing. Went off to the SDSU camp between my junior and senior year. And I'm a veteran, and this is my third year at camp. I know all the coaches, Rich Greeno, Russ Strandy, just a super guy. And we're doing the 15 miles a day and loving it. Randy Fisher and a bunch of the college guys would kind of be in town. They came up to the camp. I don't know if that was even legal, to have college athletes there in the summertime. Nobody cared. And Randy and I were such good friends. We had already, had this bond. Randy was just a competitor, but just a kindred spirit sort of guy. And I remember out for a run with Russ, and I don't remember who else. And we were talking about the upcoming cross country season. And we were talking about like Class A, like who are the favorites. Double A was Larry Beasley out of Madison, the Bills brothers from Sioux Falls, Lincoln, how they're going to have such a great season, race. And then we got into Class A, and we were talking about who had graduated, who was coming back. And, and I kind of wanted to say, well, geez, I hope I do well. And I said something to Russ. I said, yeah, what do you think, Russ? Any thoughts about who you think might win? He goes, and Russ, I don't know if you'd remember it. He goes, Mike, I think you can win. And it was a pivotal moment. I tell you, until somebody spoke the words, I would never say that, because that's just like cursing yourself. But to have somebody tell you that, he said, I think you can win, it made it a reality in my head. And I came out of that camp on fire. And I had I only lost one race out of 13 that cross country season. Larry Beasley, the defending AA champion, beat me at the SDSU Invitational of all places. I think he ran, it was like around 15:30, and I was like 15:33. I was like 3-4 seconds. He kicked me in the last half mile. He had good leg speed, and I was with him the whole way. And you know what, though? I had self-doubt because I knew how good Larry Beasley was. He had run 9:20 as a sophomore in the 2 mile. And my best at that time was like 10 flat. And I remember after that race really feeling disappointed in myself. The one race I lost as a senior, I think I got beat here rather than here, in my legs and the heart. Because I'm thinking I'm running against Larry Beasley. When he went with a half mile to go, I should have went with him. And I could say, well, you probably couldn't. I don't know. To this day, that still haunts me. But ended up winning, the state meet that year. And it gets into some pivotal moments. My dad, and I don't know, with the Memorial Day, he was a World War II vet, and he was a pretty tough guy. He was a plumber, ran a dairy farm, and he was not a guy to talk about emotions. And I can tell you there's 2 times my dad shook my hand in my life. One was at the finish of the state cross country meet. He'd always come to my races, and he'd always challenge me. And, when I cross that finish line at the state meet, the chute is forever. It's the longest finishing, back in the day when they had I don't know if they do it now with digital, you don't have chutes as much, but, they have to keep the runners in line. And I just remembered, and it wrapped around the little clubhouse they had at the old golf course north of the campus there. And I couldn't, as I went around the backside of that little clubhouse, it was just me back there. I almost ran through the chute because I couldn't wait to get to where my parents were, our coach and that sort of thing. And as I came through, in those days, the guy with the medals would stand at the end of the chute, and there's number 1, there's number 2. They just hand them out, there you go. And he handed me the gold medal, and I have that to this day. And my dad was the first person I saw, and I walked over and I handed it to him, and he shook my hand. And and it was kind of a reaffirming, because up to that point, he would be not negative, but he'd always say, when I was, my senior year, I didn't get beat, but he'd always, whenever I got beat, he'd say, nice job, but, there was always, that I think you could do better sort of thing. And at the time, I think it kind of bothered me, like, why isn't this good enough? But at the same time, I now look back to appreciate it, that don't settle. Don't settle. You did good, but there's somebody that did better. And so maybe you could do better, if they had that potential. And it's like, yeah, I think you're right. It's kind of like Coach Borman saying, you've got potential, don't sell yourself short. And so, that was exciting. I got through, I have so many vivid memories. We brought our cheerleaders from the high school football, and they're like wrestling cheer. They had a busload, and that was so cool. And I don't want to say distance runners are scrawny little guys. I got picked up by about 6 cheerleaders. Now, it's kind of embarrassing.
That's awesome.
They hoisted me up. You think of the football guys, like a couple big burly linemen picking up the guy here. Yeah, I got picked up by a group of girls. And they were all cheering and excited. I remember I was like embarrassed, and it was pretty cool, to be honest with you, but it was different. And the next day, believe it or not, Jay Dirksen was hosting the USTFF, United States Track and Field Federation, State Cross Country Championship at SDSU. I came back the next day to run another race, and guess who was there? Larry Beasley. And Larry had got beat the day before by the Bills boys. It was kind of a big upset. He had won as a junior. Mike and Mark finished second and third as juniors. They reversed on him as a senior. And I mean, you talk about some great runners. Those guys, they remembered finishing second and third, and they didn't like it. And Larry had the monkey on his back. He was the defending champion. You got nowhere to go but down, baby. You know, and it kind of wears on you. And they dueled, and those Bills boys had some leg speed, and they beat him in the last 200 meters. Both of them. And so Larry comes back the next day, and I'm there, and we dueled right again until about the half mile to go. And again, and I got to give Larry, I remember somebody on the sidelines yelling to Larry, show him who's the best runner in South Dakota. You know, because this little guy from Lennox, Mike, probably thinks he's one of, and Larry was soundly. And he beat me soundly. I think he beat me by like 6 seconds in the last quarter mile. And I noticed after that race, I had I thought I pulled a muscle. I had a fibula stress fracture. I was diagnosed then about a few days later because it got really painful. So by doing that double, I think I had a kind of a bone, I don't know what you guys call it anymore, reaction going into the state meet, but I got through the state meet. But coming back and next day and doing another cross country race, and the shoes that we wore were just track spikes, no sole in them whatsoever. You might as well ran barefoot. You just had spikes for traction. And I came down with the stress fracture, and that really set me back then that winter. I really didn't run until after the first ice. So, you're talking from October, November, December, January, the weather's horrendous. I didn't start running till early March to get ready for track, which really kind of worried me. And I had some really high goals, school records, were from a guy named Greg Halling. Greg went to SDSU and was an All-American in cross country in the late 80s, early 70s. And I've never met Greg Halling in my life, but his name was in the Lennox records up for 1 mile, 2 mile. I had to look at those for 4 years. His name, and it was 4:32 in the mile, and it was 9:46 in the 2 mile. And I also knew then he was at SDSU and became an All-American. And so that was kind of a goal of mine. Man, I want to get those. And I was scared to death because being injured all winter. And then the spring weather, I ran 6 races my senior year in track because of weather. We were cut down to 6 races. And lucky, I got at Howard Wood Dakota Relays. I got in the 2 mile, and Larry Beasley won it. Mel Miner from Rapid City Central was a heck of a runner, ended up second. I got third, ran 9:41. So I got the school record in the 2 mile there. And then at the state meet, I was able to run 4:25 and get the school record for that. So I did meet my goals. And, but I felt bad because I got at the state meet, I was 5th in the 2 mile with a 9:41. I ran about 9:41 at the state meet as well. Actually, I think I ran like 9:42 at Howard Wood, 9:41 at the state meet. And then in the mile, I finished 6th, not even in the top 5 with a 4:25. That should tell you the quality of running. I mean, the Bills boys, Mel Miner from Rapid City, Larry Beasley. I mean, if you didn't run in the low 420s or sub 420s, you weren't going to probably be in the hunt. And I tried to break our school record in the half, 159.7. And I would go out in 57, 58 and die 1,000 deaths and run a 202, 203. It was just a pattern I got into. And I ran 202.2 for 8, which converts to 201.5 for 800 meters, by the way. And never got the school record in the half.
That's impressive. That is so impressive.
Oh, well,
were we running on rubber tracks then, Mike, as well, or was it cinders?
It was just what it was. And it was just, from everybody pushed everybody to higher level of performance. And so then it became time. I wasn't even thinking of college, really, because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And, I did get some recruiting from USD, Black Hill State. Jay sent me some really nice letters. After the state meet, Jay was the most organized person you ever met. He sent me the results of the state meet, and he wrote a personal note on it, which I thought was pretty cool. He goes, because I think he remembered the guy who showed up 3 years ago at the running camp, who was basically the worst runner at his running camp. And so I really wanted to go to state, and he knew it. And so we went up, my folks and I went up there and talked to him. And he was quite honest. He said, the Bills boys committed to go. They got full rides. And Jay was a good psychologist. He said, Mike, I don't think you can make varsity for us up here. And he might as well have said, come up here and prove to me that you can make varsity. But he didn't say it. He said it the other way. I don't think you can make varsity. But I couldn't get up there fast enough. You might have taken that two ways. He doesn't want me, or he was playing some mind games. I think I got a room. That's what my scholarship was a room, and that's all I needed. I just wanted give me something here, And my dad was disabled. Financially, I got a lot of aid. My dad had a heart attack at age 46 when I was 14, and that's why he could come to all my races. He was put on disability. He had bypass surgery, survived it. This is back in the stone age of surgeries. And so my dad was on Social Security when I was a teenager. And so I think I got a check, but I never saw it. My folks used it to live with. And so I did qualify for some good aid, that way. So that really made college a reality for us. So I had never met Mike and Mark Bills, just saw them running. I knew who they were. They knew who I was, but that was it. We had no relationship. Randy Fisher was now a freshman at SDSU when I was a senior. And when I committed to go there, Randy and I had talked. We're rooming. We're going to room together. And so we roomed in Brown Hall, 424 Brown. I lived in that room for 4 years. 3 of those years with Randy. We were roommates for 3 years. Obviously, we got along pretty good. And we trained together every day. The Bills were down the hall, about 4 doors down. They lived in their room for 4 years. Now, that's unheard of today. I don't know if you can, freshmen maybe have to stay in the dorm 1 year, or I don't know if they've loosened that up. We spent 4 years in the same room. I could tell you my room phone number if you want to hear it. But anyway, I didn't get to meet the Bills. What hall was this? Jay invited us up, all of the Bills and me, and I can't remember if Randy was there, to a 1 hour run. Those are really kind of popular in the day. And we went up there in the heat of the summer and ran a 1 hour run on the track on a hot Saturday morning. And I got to ran with Mike and Mark pretty much the whole hour, and chit-chatted with them. We ran about a little under 6 minute pace. I think we did like 10 miles, 400, 500 yards. So we were just like probably running 550s, 555s. And not, it was hard. I mean, towards the end there, it was brutal on a track for a hot summer day. But we kind of bonded there and showed up for cross country. And we could go for a long story on our freshman year. Jay had 4 freshmen, the Bills brothers, me, and a guy named Mark Hillstrom from Sioux Falls, Washington. He had Randy Fisher, a sophomore. So then we had Jeff Herman from Madison, a junior, and we had Pat Tobin, our captain, a senior. He was a junior college transfer from a really good program. And we were putty in Jay's hands. If he would have said, when he said jump, we said how high. We did workouts, and Mike and Mark Bills, to this day, whenever we get together, we reminisce. Jay would pair us up. He'd pair Mike and I up for workouts, and he'd pair Randy and Mark up. I think he wanted to break the Bills up a little bit because they ran together all the time. And Mark always let Mike win. They'll never talk about that, but in high school, Mark never beat Mike, but he was 1 step behind him. And one time I asked him, we got to be friends, and he said, I don't want to cause stress. If I would have lunged at the line and beat my twin brother, it was just, that was the pecking order they were comfortable with. Mark didn't have a problem finishing second to Mike. It's kind of like pro cyclists. They don't care who wins the race as long as one of their guys on the team wins. They'll sacrifice themselves to make sure one of their teammates wins the race. And that's kind of their attitude. They didn't care which one of them won as long as one of them won.
And Mike, I have a question for you here. So tell me about what you learned from Mike and Mark. I mean, that's pretty impressive that obviously they're willing to, sort of just work together, and Mark, right, just be 1 step behind.
Oh yeah, they were identical twins, and in every aspect. Mike was stronger mentally. Mark was good-natured, friendlier. They were both super guys. They were like brothers. I learned from them. They were Rich Greeno products. And Rich, if you didn't know him, was probably one of the greatest coaches, I'd say, in the nation. He did get Coach of the Year, National Coach of the Year, and he was amazing. Outstanding in that he was such a nice guy, but he also, there was a line, and everybody knew where it was. And this was not, and they were well established in the Rich Greeno process. And so, what I learned from those guys, there was no cutting corners. It was a job. We were there to do our job and have some fun along the way. There was no like, hey, let's cut through this parking lot. No, that was just, why would you ever do that? That's, trying to find shortcuts. Rich Greeno, I always remember this, told them never eat pie crust. That's where the lard is. When they make pie crust the old fashioned way, and if lard is not good for you, don't eat the pie crust. I remember we'd go to a restaurant and they would not eat their pie crust. They'd eat the fruit or whatever the part, and they go, why aren't you eating that? And they wouldn't eat sunflower seeds because it's Rich Greeno. There was these old myths or wise tales. I don't know what was wrong with sunflower seeds. Too much salt? No, we need salt. But they did not vary from those. And if Jay said we're doing a 20-mile run, and we would like to go home on weekends. We're little babies. We want to go home to our moms and have them take care of us. And so we would run in Sioux Falls, our 20 milers. And Jay had arranged with Lyle Clausen, who was at all the running camps. Lyle was at Brandon High School, just outside Sioux Falls, coaching. He would meet us every Sunday at Lincoln High School, and we do a 20-mile run. And we, because we're so rookies at this, we had to Lyle took us under his wing and just made sure we were running it not too hard, not too slow. Whenever we did them at SDSU, Russ Strandy, Bob Bartley, and we did 20 miles with those guys. And I hope they don't take this the wrong way. We'd start with them. And it was, I don't know what the pace was. Nobody had watches. We didn't have chronographs. Nobody was worried about time. It was, this is what we're going to do a 20-mile run. It was probably like 7 to 8 minute pace. And we couldn't take it. We couldn't take it. We'd bust after about 10 miles. You'd kind of just subtly, you didn't want to say, you guys are too slow. We just kind of naturally just start rolling. And we're probably running closer to 6 minute miles by the end. And it was we enjoyed, they held us back probably in a good way, that we didn't overrun the 20 miler was a recovery day, actually, even though it's not a recovery, but we had raced on Saturday typically. And so it was just a total aerobic, mitochondrial development day. Go out and grow mitochondria, grow. That was kind of our adage. And no drinking water, no stopping. If you found a garden hose, maybe 20-mile runs. I can remember, occasionally going into a gas station and asking if we could drink out of their hose.
Did you have any favorite routes around Brookings? Like,
Lyle, the Aurora route was, running out to Aurora was probably, that was a solid 15, and we could turn it into a 20. And then it seemed like we'd go south of town a few times. The favorite routes. We try, it's kind of like cycling. Let's just go somewhere different. We try to mix it up. I
suppose the great thing is, you got 1 mile blocks everywhere. So everything can be measured in that way.
It was just 20 milers it was really, now I kind of look back and I really enjoyed them. The Bills hated them. And I think if they were on podcasts, they would not argue with me. They did not enjoy doing them. They were middle distance runners primarily that got forced to become distance runners. And they did not like doing them. And but they did them. And there's
no better feeling, is there, than a Sunday run
out of this. There's no weaseling around. It was what needed to be done. And it paid off. I mean, Mike's a 3-time All-American, Mark's a 2-time All-American. And Mark would have been a 3-time All-American, but he stress fractured his foot as a junior, still ran the national meet on a broken foot. We ended up second. We got second our junior and senior year at the national meet, which, yay, second place. We probably scored we got second by the skin of our teeth both those years. I guess it doesn't matter if you get it by 1 point or 38 points, but we needed Mark, and, kudos, talk about stepping up to the plate. He knew he had a stress fractured foot and he could run, but it was very uncomfortable and it held him back. And we got second. If we wouldn't have had him, we wouldn't have. And so, I still think back to that and you go, man, that's just ballsy. That's just being tough. He did what he had to do for the team, and that's just the way we were. We always had each other's back. But those 20 milers, we probably, I hate to even tell you the story. When Beardsley came, we were juniors, and so many great stories. Dick came in our team meeting. I was team captain, and Undy was there. as a first-year coach, and we were the Brant boys. They were sophomores, so they had been there. We all knew each other. Nobody knew Dick, and he sat in the back, very humble, kept quiet. He was a junior college All-American in the marathon, and so he could have come in there kind of with a little bit of attitude. 100% the other direction. Didn't want any attention. Just kind of wanted to not. That's just Dick Beardsley. He's the most friendly guy you ever want to meet. So he doesn't want to create any kind of feeling that any other way. And I remember I had to kind of run him down after the meeting ended. He bolted out of the door up at the Hyper Center, and I kind of caught him out on the stairs there below, heading out. And I said, "Hey, Dick, I just want to say, hey, we're happy to have you here, and welcome aboard. And we're so excited because you're going to make it so much better." And he was like, "Cool, all right." The next day, my future wife and I are driving down the road, heading downtown, probably to Bartling's Furniture to buy shoes. And we see Dick walking along the sidewalk. And I pull the car over, and my future wife, girlfriend, sitting next beside me. And we roll down the window, and I go, "Hey, Beards, what are you doing?" And he goes, "Oh, I have to get some pencils." I'm heading downtown to get some pencils. It's like 3 miles. I go, "Well, jump in and we'll give you a ride." And he goes, "Oh, no. I don't want to ruin your guys' day." And I said, "Shut up and get in the car." And he got in, slid in beside my wife, Karen, and he never got out of the car to this day. He's still in the car with us. And so, no, I mean, Dick and I were, again, the kindred spirit thing. And we just, the workouts, the races, we had so much fun, so many stories. He was an RA for the dorm over on the west side of the campus. And it was Hobo Day weekend, and we were going to Madison, Wisconsin for the Tom Jones Invitational, big meet. We always ran against the University of Wisconsin. They just drill us. But I think Jay and Scott wanted us to go there and get drilled by some Division I teams. So we go to Division II and we ran against Division I. We can run against these guys, sort of thing. And they were not going to let Dick go because he was an RA on Hobo weekend. You know what happens in the dorms in Hobo weekend, right? People sometimes overindulge and maybe do things that they shouldn't be doing. And they need all the RAs on duty to kind of hold the things. They weren't going to let Dick go, even though, because part of his scholarship, his work study thing was being an RA. And we kind of, Undy went to I think it was Harry Manshine, the athletic director at that time, and said, we need him. We're going to the University of Wisconsin, and this is like one of the big meets of the year. We got to have him. They ended up renting an airplane. And Dick Lee, the assistant coach, Dick Beardsley, and the pilot flew over to Madison, Wisconsin that Saturday morning. We had driven over on Friday, and he met us at the race. And so he had flown, and they flew Dick in. Wow. And that's pretty cool. SDSU stepped up to the plate, and Dick ran like crap. I beat him. You don't get to say that about Dick Beardsley very often. And he did not run well. Gee, you think? He got up that morning, got on a plane, flew to Madison, Wisconsin, cramped on a little plane, anyway, so we would do a 2.5 mile warm up. We did a 5 mile race. We do about a 2.5 mile cool down. And then we would load up and head back to Brookings. Well, there was an extra seat on the plane, and I wanted it because our girlfriends, he was dating his future wife by then, and they were waiting for us. In the drive back to Madison, you guys tell me 6-7 hours, I don't know, it's forever. You get home at 3 a.m. And the flight would land by like 4 that afternoon. And I wanted to go, and we had the women's team and the men's team, and everybody's like, well, who should get to go? And Undy goes, well, I don't care. And I said, well, I'm team captain, so I think I should go. And that didn't go very well, by the way. And that was kind of a joke. And everybody's like, yeah, that's not happening, Mike. So we came up with a plan. We said, look, let's make it fair. Random, let's draw cards. We always had cards. We played a lot of cards. I don't know if you guys did in your day. In the back of the van, there was always a game of pitch being played or something like hearts. I don't know. And so we got the deck of cards out, and we had a guy named Ken Cizadlo who was like, we called him Mr. Spock because he was so analytical that he was like very, very precise. If we said there's a car coming up behind us and it was a pickup, he goes, no, it wasn't a car, it was a pickup. It was just that kind of guy, and we love him to death, and ran varsity. And so he said, oh, wait, well, what if 2 people, aces win, but what if 2 people pull aces? Well, Ken Cizadlo came up, well, ace of clubs will beat spades, which will be hearts, which will beat diamonds. We had a hierarchy in case that happened. So, and we haven't drawn cards, and I'm telling people, $50, I'll pay $50. If you win this drawing, I'll give you money. Because most of them didn't care when they got back. So we started drawing cards, and I hadn't even looked at mine. Everybody's flipping their cards over. Somebody had an 8, somebody had a 10, somebody had a jack, and then somebody, I can't remember who it was, pulled out an ace. And this only card that could beat it was the ace of spades. And they all go, Mike, what do you got? And I turned my card over and it was the ace of spades.
Oh,
I am
nice.
not kidding.
Nice.
Dick and I are jumping up and down, hugging each other, high-fiving. The team is all spitting, kicking dirt. They're like, I wanted it so bad. Nobody wanted me to get it. So Dick and I flew back to Brookings and we buzzed the stadium as the Hobo Day game was just ending. We missed the football game. And we got off the plane. And of course, we need to go for another run. It's, we always had double days, man. And so we went for a 5-mile run before we went to our girlfriends, had pizza, sat there, played board games. Saturday, Hobo Day weekend. And it got late. I don't know if you guys ever experienced anything, hanging out with some girls and you're in the dorms and it gets late. Time just kind of goes away from you. It got to be like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And we're getting tired. And the girls are like, God, are you guys ever going to leave? And we go, okay, we're out of here. And I think we had to run through the fire escape because after 2 o'clock, if they caught you in there, it was like, oh, you're in big trouble now. So you'd look and run so nobody catch you. So Dick and I get out on the green there out of Matthews Hall. He's heading across campus. I'm heading to Brown Hall. And it's like a beautiful starlit night. And Dick's and I go, Beards, we got to do a 20 tomorrow. And he goes, yeah. And I it's like 3. And I go, Beards, let's just go do it now. He goes, yeah, let's just do it now. And then we can sleep all day tomorrow. I go to my dorm room, get my stuff, head over. 4 a.m. We're rolling out on a 20-miler. We run out to the golf course at Oakwood. And I remember we got out there, it's dark, and we turned on the spigot at the clubhouse and got down on our hands and knees to get a little drink of water. Because, we're like, it's October. And we're coming back into Brookings, and there's still people out partying, honking their horns, waving at us and stuff. I get into my dorm room. It's 6 a.m. I've had now a 35-mile, 24-hour period. If you go back to the morning before to this, I've run 35 miles in 24 hours, haven't slept yet. Can I tell you how the rest of the season kind of went? Not so bad. When you talk about making some training errors, that we were enthusiastic. I was so tired. I slept at Dick's. He was an RA. He had a room to himself. It was 6 a.m. I said, Beards, I crawled in his top bunk. You threw a blanket up there on me. I just passed out. I think I got up at noon. I think I slept about 6 hours. And Dick and I will admit, the rest of the season, because he was really on a roll. He had won the SDSU Invitational. Richard Catani from Iowa State, Dick gave him a run for his money. They came up to SDSU and ran on our course, and we beat Iowa State in our duel. But this Richard Catani was a great Kenyan runner, and Dick was really rolling until that weekend when he flew out there. We ran 35 miles without sleeping. The rest of the season, he ran decent, but not I think he pushed both of us beyond some. I don't know. I can't explain it. The level of recovery wasn't there anymore. And we went to the conference meet and we just dominated as a team. And then when we went to the national meet, we did not run well. Dick and I were back in the 50s. I had finished 28th as a junior. I missed All-American by like 10 seconds. And I thought, damn, I'm going to get it as a senior. And again, count your chickens before they're hatched. We did not run well. And I think it kind of goes back to maybe some training errors. Undy should have told us, don't do stupid stuff. And yet, no, it wasn't Undy's role. It was our role to get our 20. And he didn't say stay up all night and then don't go to sleep and do just stuff you do. And you look back and go, well, it was my own fault.
That's what being in your 20s is like, though, Mike.
You do stupid stuff. But Joel Grant got a second place that year because Joel, Dick, and I were all sucking wind at about 50th place with probably, I am not exaggerating, guys, a mile to go. The Bills boys are up there getting All-American. And Undy's going nuts because he's like, this is not looking good. This is not looking good. And he said, you guys have got to move up. You've got to move up. And you want to go, if I could move up, Scott, I would move up. But all at once, Joel Brandt, and to this day, he took off. And I mean, you saw him going, and it's like, holy shit. Excuse me. But he just went, and he went, and you could just see him going. And I don't know what place he ended up, I think, in the low 30s. He probably passed 20 runners. And, at the end of a race, there's not a lot of changing a position usually. Everybody's kind of in their zone at that point where you're not able to go any faster and you're trying not to go slower. He was going faster. And he got a second place because we ended up second by like 2 or 3 points over, I can't remember who. And if anybody deserves, he didn't get All-American. He put in the All-American effort. And I remember the rest of that day, he had a migraine like nobody's business. And I think he ran himself into some kind of a, almost a stroke. I mean, I don't know what his blood pressure must have been at the end of that thing. But to this day, I mean, give the guy, that dude was something else. I mean, he went on to run 14:05 on the track, and had that school record for a long time. And you talk about fun guys to hang out with. Joel and Paul Brandt, Mike and Mark Bills weren't exactly party animals, but they're just super, super solid guys. Beersley, you can't have a better time hanging out with somebody than hanging out with that dude. And so nothing but fun years. Mike and I, whenever we see each other, and we've said it to each other more than once, those are the best days of our lives. You hear those songs, and you kind of go, and I tell the athletes that are possibly listening in on this, man, don't take it for granted. Take every moment you can to the max. Don't run 35 miles in a 24-hour period without sleeping during the season, because it doesn't end well. And
if you didn't, you wouldn't have such a good story to tell.
Oh yeah, there's more to that story that I'll tell you someday when we're off camera. But I don't know.
So your junior senior year were both Scott Underwood's first and second years, and you said you got twice second at nationals.
Right, yeah.
That's pretty impressive start for Scott Underwood, just coming off running himself in college. So that's pretty impressive right there.
Well, we love Scott, and Scott, he was an SDSU grad, so he fit right. I mean, he knew the system. It wasn't like I don't think Scott will take this the wrong way. It was kind of Jay's team. And we pretty much did the workouts we had been doing. We just needed somebody there. We needed that authority figure. And he did that. I always liked about Scott. He hated driving. I don't know about you guys. I drove a lot. I don't know if they let athletes drive, but we did. And he'd be back there playing cards with the guys. And I liked driving, and it was better than sitting there studying or something like that, or whatever. And I just remember Scott was really motivating. We did some really super good, some great workouts. I give him credit. My senior year, 1979. I tell you, I had no good track season. 79 was the only decent season I had. Running in winter in South Dakota, and the Hyper Center track, the D-shaped track, injury. I'd always get hurt. I had a metatarsal stress fracture running from up there. Had a FTL fascia tensa lateral. I tore my IT band. That's a slow healer. Just always something. And Jay was tough. He wanted to win everything. So we did some really killer workouts.
Hey, what were the key meets each year for you? Was it Drake still when you were in college,
for sure. I never got to go to Drake because I was always hurt. But yeah, Drake was huge. I hate to say it, Greg, because of when you're hurt and you're off the team. And not that we weren't supportive, if we'd be at the meets, if they were local. Howard Wood was big, for locally, that's, because that's kind of the home turf. Drake was always probably the biggest meet of the year. But then the conference, trying to, and Don Larson had gone up to North Dakota State. And I don't know if he's still there or not, but they were really tough. It seemed like Northern Colorado, they were always they had some good distance runners. My memory of track is really, not very good. The spring of 79, I was hurt, and I'd kind of written it off. I just gave up on track basically. And Undy, I was going to go out and do a long run, and Undy goes, "No, we're doing mile repeats on the track." And he was kind of testy. I'd never seen him. He's like, he didn't tell. It was kind of like, "You're running mile repeats with the Bills and the Brants tonight." I didn't want to do it because I hadn't done any speed work or anything. And I think they were 3/4 now that I'm thinking it was. And I felt great. It was one of those workouts you get out there and you're all at once like, "Wow, I'm running with Mike and Joel and I'm feeling pretty good here." And I ran like a 4:06 1500 then, like the next week. And then we had some more great workouts. One of my favorite workouts of all time is 10 times 400 with 1 minute rest. I mean, that's just a great workout. I mean, you do a 400 at about 63, 64, 65 pace, take a minute, which isn't enough, and do another one, take a minute and go again. I mean, you really don't want to go again, but it's time to go. And so it's kind of that race simulation where you're not getting full recovery, but you just keep building that. And I ran a steeple, a 952, my one attempt. And that's a crazy event. And steeple cross intrigues me because it's on grass, but jumping through a water thing, yeah. And I didn't enjoy that. And then we went to Howard Relay, and I led off the 4-mile relay, and I ran a 4:15 lead off, and I felt good. And we had a good relay team. Mark Bills, I think Joel Brandt was on it, and I don't think we won. I think we got second or something like that. And I wasn't scheduled to run the next day, but my wife, my girlfriend, graduated the next morning, and I went to her graduation. Her parents were there. My folks came up, and the 1500 college division was that afternoon. And we went out for lunch after graduation, and I didn't really eat much for lunch. I was kind of thinking ahead, thinking, I wonder if I could get into the 1500 this afternoon at Howard Wood. And so I ate a very light lunch, and we drove down to Sioux Falls to watch the meet. And Kurt Swanhorse, I don't even know who Kurt Swanhorse was, just a beast. He had run like 3 events already at Howard Wood, relays, had run really well. And I went up to Undy, and I had thrown my kit in the car. I wasn't scheduled to run, but I had my stuff. And I went to Undy, I go, hey, Undy, is there any way I could maybe get into the 1500? And he goes, go talk to Kurt, because Kurt's in, and I can't remember somebody else. You can only have like two people. And I went to Kurt, and Kurt didn't hesitate. He goes, you can have it, man. He was, after three events, he wasn't looking forward to that 1500. So I had to, I went to the meet official, said, hey, we're going to, Mike Dunlap instead of Kurt Swanhorse. And he go, yeah, no problem. So I lined up, and this is every party we go to with SDSU alumni, Brad Court, because he's a 1500 Howard Wood champ. Chris Gruenhagen is a 1500 Howard Wood champ. We have to swap 1500 meter stories. Well, the gun goes off, and we go out, like, I go through, did you ever see the movie, the video of Dave Waddle at Munich after the first lap? That was that was 10 meters off the back, 10 meters, all by myself, feeling humiliated because I'm not running with the group of runners. I'm like, I'm running, and they go through the quarter, the 460. And I'm like 61, 62. And I'm back there feeling sorry for myself. Like, God, this is embarrassing. Well, you know what happened the second lap? They ran a 65. And I got back to the back of the pack, like Waddle did. He got back to the back of the pack, going into the second lap. Well, I was, the third lap, they ran a 66. Now I'm feeling this 66 is feeling pretty decent. I'm matriculating my way through this group of runners on the backstretch. And as we come around into the last lap, I'm in second place and feeling not too bad. And I remember one of our assistant coaches was there. And as we went by the 3/4 mark, it was a 3:12 at 3/4. So that was a 60. I ran a 61, a 65, and a 66. And I tried to pass on the backstretch. It was a Drake runner. And I went to the second lane, and I went for it. And that dude held me and held me and held me. I could not get by him. I mean, we were a dead sprint down the backstretch. And Beardsley's there. My girlfriend's there. Jan Kane, my roommate at that time, was there. And they're all just going nuts. They're screaming. And my high school coach had taught me years earlier, do not pass on a curve. Going into that last corner, if you're in lane 2 and a guy just keeps you out there, you're running that extra distance. So I dropped in back behind him, and I was kind of trying to regather. And as we came off the turn, I noticed the Drake runner stumble. This dude was hurting. I wasn't feeling, that great. You like to think you feel really good, but yeah, everybody's suffering at this point. But I thought that dude is hurting worse than I am. I mean, he stumbled, and I went to lane 2, and we went all the way up the home stretch, neck and neck. And need I tell you, it was a lean at the tape. The Drake guy, he didn't face plant, but he went down. And I felt they did have a finish line in those days. It was still hand timed. Okay. They didn't have the beat. And I remember the finish line hit me right across the bridge of my nose because I was leaning for it. And I came to a stop, stayed on my feet. I almost fell. And they have pickers. They come up to you and they get your name. And like the first place picker goes and gets the guy who won the race. And the second place picker goes and they write down who are you, by the way. And the guy came up to him and he goes, what's your name? And I go, what place? I didn't know if I'd won or not. He goes, first. And I look, and Beardsley and Kano are bounding across the infield. I mean, they're like,
that's awesome.
Oh, they were just so pumped. Cool. I mean, we're high-fiving, and my girlfriend's there. My high school coach was there. He comes up and shakes my hand as I'm changing out of my spikes and stuff. It's one of those pivotal moments where you go, all these years of not having a decent track season just accumulated in one race. I can kind of walk away. And then the next week was the 10K at the conference meet. I ran 30:29, and it was down in Omaha. And it was one of those tracks that was all weather, which means it was asphalt. And we ran in those great track spikes that we had in those days. And, I kind of wonder to this day, not making excuses. Yeah, I wonder how, you'll never know. I had a great race, felt wonderful. With a mile to go, Rob Kinnunen from USD made a move, and I couldn't cover it. And he beat me by 8 seconds. And I won it. So the Howardwood 1500. Yes, I won. It was very exciting.
I was going to ask you about the 1980. So you left South Dakota State University on right? You set the school record, then 10K. And I'm really curious.
Yep.
79. Yep. So you left in 79, but 1980 Olympic trials, you were able to qualify for the 1980 Olympic marathon trials. And I think it was Buffalo, New York.
Yep. The trials were at Buffalo. And I came back for my 5th year. I squeezed my 4 into 5. And so I was back in school in the fall of 79. And so I ran the Black Hills Marathon. It was the first Black Hills Marathon. And I called the race director and I said, look, I want to try to qualify for the Olympic trials. This course has to be measured, and certified, because if I can't do it, and then it's a wasted effort, it doesn't count. And they said, oh, no. We had the School of the Mine and the South Dakota Mine and Technology, their engineering department, like they have guys they're training in this. They had their professors and they took their students out there and they measured it, so it's legit. They measured the shortest route. And I remember that on race day, because as you know, Highway 44, what's that, something Rim Canyon, it doesn't go straight at all. I mean, it curves, and they measured it as the shortest distance. And so as a runner, you didn't just stay on the left-hand side, you take the shortest distance, which luckily that race was started at 6 a.m. on Labor Day Sunday, I believe, Saturday or Sunday. I think they did on Labor Day Sunday, 6 a.m. in the morning. It was dark at Lake Picola when we got up there. Anyway, finished at 8:20 in the morning. I ran 8:20 in 31 seconds. I was on a 2:18 pace till about 24 miles. And now people laugh when you say this. There was no goo. there was water and something called, back in the day, they had this stuff called Gluconade, which was Kool-Aid with a bunch of salt thrown into it. And that was available. And we kind of stayed away from it because it usually cramp you up and give you diarrhea or something like that. So at best, and, I tried to, and I couldn't drink, we didn't practice drinking in running. And so you try to get a little water in though. And so usually around 20 to 26 miles, somewhere in there, the wheels would fly off because, I believe that the central brain processing thing, the law of running, Dr. Noakes.
Central governor, yeah.
Yeah, when your blood sugar goes, your brain says, yeah, that's enough of this. I read a statistic recently, and I think the Marines, and you probably relate to this, Marty, when you think you're done, you probably still have 40% left inside of you. But your brain's job is to keep you alive. And so when you get down to the bare where your brain says, that's enough of this stuff, I'm going to shut this guy off. And your brain says, I'm going to de-innervate those, your legs go dead, but they've done studies and they'll do muscle biopsies. There's still glycogen there. And so why do my legs feel so bad? And one of the theories is the brain says, yeah, no, we're going into some territory I don't think is safe for us right now. And, my job as the brain is to keep the body functioning because it's keeping me alive up here. And so if you can just keep the brain happy, and that just takes the goos, I think they're fantastic. I use them cycling all the time. I love Coke, defizz Coke and stuff like that. Yeah, because the brain only uses sugar. And so if you can keep that, but at the amount that's not going to give you GI issues. Anyway, I died 1,000 decibels last 2 miles at Black Hills Marathon, and finished. And, I got to the 20-mile mark. The 20-mile guy, the timer was like the 5-mile guy had to go to the 20-mile mark to give splits. He wasn't there. And I was like, that's the split you want to know. What's my 20-mile split? I got to know what I got to do this last 10K in. He wasn't there. I about stopped. It was written on the road 20 miles. And it was like, where is he? And people go, well, why didn't you just look at your watch? We didn't have them. There wasn't, chronographs were expensive. I was a college student. They were like $100. They were like $50. I mean, might have been $500. I had no idea. And so I got to the finish and I thought there's no way I made 2:21. There's no way. I mean, I was just dying those last 2 miles. And the guy came up and showed me the stopwatch, which was what the sweep second hand and the little tiny, I couldn't read it. I couldn't like, what does it say? And he goes 2:20:31. And I very happy. And so I thought, okay, I've got my trials qualifier. And so I'm going to train. And I had track eligibility, 79 for the spring of 80. And of course, did that 70-90 workout with Joel Brandt that winter. Injured myself. And that tensor fascia lateral, the IT band thing, would not heal. I didn't, nobody knew anything as far as therapy and treatments, and there was no options. And so I missed it. I was injured. Went back to school my 5th year and did not run track. And that was heartbreaking. Yeah.
Did you get it? Did you get anything from as a memento at least?
What's that?
Did you get anything as a memento from missing?
Yeah, they sent me a T-shirt. Olympic Trials T-shirt. I still have it stuck in the box somewhere. Because I think when I called and I told them I wasn't coming, this poor girl, because they have a roster, they know you're gonna come, and stuff. And I said, like, I'm not. You have to take me off the list. She goes, I thought she was gonna start crying. She felt so bad for me, and because I think they were so excited. Beardsley went and ran 2:16 flat, got 16th place, and that was like. Wow, that was eye-opening for us because up until that point, Dick had ran 2:20. He ran a 2:20. I can't remember where that was, and he ran like 2:21, 2:20, and got his qualifier. And I think his goal was to go to the trials, lay it on the line, and see how fast I can run, and then probably get into farming. Do my dairy business. He got married. That June, right after the trials. And after he ran his 2:16, he and Mary, his wife, sat down and he said, I think I can do better. And they made a plan. They went to Minneapolis. She worked odd jobs, bank teller. He worked at Gary Brooklyn. That was that kind of back when the runners would kind of help support each other. Gary would hire runners like Dick just to make enough money to make ends meet, kind of, but give them time to run. And so he started training up in Excelsior, Minnesota. And we went up there that Christmas of 1980. I'd gotten healthy that summer, and I remember doing some great runs with. There was a group of runners that were from the local St. Thomas College. They were Golden Valley runners. They were there over Christmas vacation. Joe Bros, Mike Palmquist. They were really great runners, and we'd get together, group runs, long runs. Dick was doing like 140 miles a week. I was doing kind of. I think I might have sent it to you, Marty. I was doing like 100 to 120 a week, and had some great runs up there with Dick. And then we went to Houston Marathon in that January 10th of 81. So that was the winter of 80, the Christmas of 80. We were up there with Dick and his wife. The Beardsleys and the Dunlaps had a tradition for about 14 years of spending New Year's Eve together. We'd always get together for New Year's Eve. And it was always Uno, and the kids would drive us crazy. We'd get them to bed, and we just sat around and had such a good time together. And so that Dick, we were talking when I was up there at Christmas for New Year's, and I said, I'd called the Houston race director, and they said, if you can get here, Mike, we'll get you free entry. I was a 2:20 marathoner at that point, and Dick was at this point, I think a 2:13 marathoner from New York that fall. And he was getting some money and a room and every expenses and all that kind of stuff. And so Dick said, Mike, you get a ticket, you room with me. We'll keep your expenses. All you need is a ticket. You're in. You got the race entry fee covered. I'll put you up and feed you. Just get here. I went to the Sioux Falls Running Club and asked if they would sponsor. I had no money. I was a newlywed. And I needed a couple $100. And I could have went to my folks. I wasn't going to do that. I mean, this is on me. This is my life. And I went to the running club and I said, would you guys sponsor me? And Rich Greeno was on the board, and a Dr. Bob Willix, he was a cardiac. They were so nice. They're all my friends. And they went into closed session and came back, and they said, Mike, we had a little visit, and we think what you're doing is really admirable. But we kind of feel the running club wasn't designed to sponsor runners. People give us dues. We're promoting running, and we want to promote you, but we just, who do we give money to and who do we not give money to? How do we set up those kind of guidelines? We don't have them. And they were so nice. I was disappointed. I said, no, I got it. I understand. No problem. No deal. As I was leaving the meeting, Dr. Bob Willix, cardiovascular surgeon, pulled me aside, handed me a check for $150 out of his private fund. He just wrote me a check. And I probably almost started crying because I could come up with a $50 or whatever I needed to get there. Dr. Willix has passed since then. He retired in Florida, and he passed recently. His son lives in Raleigh. I ran into his son during a 24-hour bike ride. I'm wearing a jersey that says South Dakota, and he goes, South Dakota, I used to live in South Dakota. I go, what's your name? He goes, Bob Willix. I go, no, you're not Bob Willix. I know Bob Willix. He goes, I'm Bob Willix Jr. I met his son. I told his son this story. And wow. I tell you, talk about a cool thing. Showed up in Houston. Cool story, yeah. I get to the hotel. Dick left me a key. I go up to the room. It's beautiful. It's at the Radisson. And hang out with Dick. The next day, we're running a marathon. And we get to the start. We take off. And I ran my first mile of the Houston Marathon in 4 minutes and 55 seconds. Just to get away from a couple of 5,000 runners. And we get away from the group. And there's a group of about 10 of us. And I'm thinking to myself, let's do some math here, Mike. You're a 5:20 per mile marathoner, and you just ran a 4:55 first mile. This doesn't bode well. And so I backed it down and ran through 2 miles in like 10:10. And I had all these splits somewhere. And, I just kind of kept, you kind of know I'm okay, but I need to back it down a little bit more. And I let Bill Rogers and Dick and Jeff Wells and Lionel Ortego, all these famous guys go. And I kind of fell back into that no man's land, which really is a bummer. You're too fast for the masses, but you're too slow to run with the fast guys. And so you're kind of all by yourself. And finally, 2 guys from Minneapolis showed up, Al Zetterlund and Steve Benson, good friends of mine. They were running, and they come up on me because I'd gone out fast. They'd gone out a little easier. And they go, hey, Dunn, my nickname in college. And I said, hey, guys. And they go, how you doing? I go, I'm hanging. And we said, well, let's just settle in here. And we ran together. Again, it was kind of it was almost like we 3 formed a little group together, a little team, we're all out here trying to run faster. And I don't know how long, we went through the half, I know, in about 107, 108. So we were flying, and it was a double loop. And we got to the last like 5 miles, and I could tell I was feeling pretty good. And those guys were easing up a little bit. And I said, look, and it was kind of one of those things, no problem. I'm going to keep going here, guys. And they're like, good luck, and I started seeing runners, and I started picking guys off, and I ended up running 2:19:48, and I got 7th. And so there were some guys that went out really hard and were just dying, thousands of deaths. And so if you message to a lot of people, that if you can negative split, I didn't, but if you can save something for those last few miles, it's amazing how many people you can pick up. Dick and he got 2nd behind Bill Rogers, ran 2:12. We had a good weekend. We went to Gillies that night. The race, Tenneco, sponsored it, and they wined and dined us, and met all these famous runners. Met Bill Rogers. I shook hands with Bill Rogers, and it was like shaking a little bag of bones. I think the guy is like a bird. Dick is too. And I know I sent you a picture of Dick and I. It's like a bird cage. It's just nothing. There's nothing on those guys' body that doesn't help them propel them forward at a high rate of speed. Some of that's God-given.
Lungs and bones.
They're just legs and lungs and bones. The Kenyans, the Kenyans make Dick look big, because they're just like a tendon. But, that got things going. And that got me into 1982. 81 was an interesting year in that I got hurt. After Houston, I was so excited, came back, ran great, and then I went to Statehood Days, and maybe Bob mentioned that. It's a 10-miler, and ran 49:42. Dick won it in 48:25. So sub 5-minute miles for 10 miles, and real competitive race, felt good. Ran a 10K over in Marshall, Minnesota, and this is all February, March. And
Mike, sorry, I'm going to stop you. Were you running for a club at this stage,
no,
or were you just running
totally
unattached?
Me, myself, and I was working at a running shop, and I know when Dick ran Boston, it's such a great story because that was in early '82, and he had already ran 2:09 in '81 at Grandma's. I got hurt and missed a lot of '81. And came back then in '82 and had a big year. But Dick, when he ran Boston, now you got to remember in 1982, we had no internet, nothing, and so I'm at the running store. I was working at a Neil Graff's running store. Athletic Attic was Neil Graff was a pro football player. After 5 years in the NFL, came back, opened up a running store, him and his wife. I was their only employee. And Neil and I met at the races, and Neil was a smart marketing guy. Here's Mike, who wins a lot of races. And if he works at our store, that brings they got guys there that actually know how to run, and stuff. And so he offered me a full-time job, and he actually offered me, he said, I don't want to just pay you an hourly wage. I want to give you a piece of the profit. Because if you're a part, not even a part owner, it was like 1%. You have a vested interest in the success of the store. If you're an hourly employee, you could care less if I sell any shoes. I get paid the same whether I do or not. And I kind of thought he was a finance major, and I kind of appreciate that. Neil was a super athlete, and him and his wife did great. Well, the Boston Marathon's taken off. I think they ran at noon back in those days. Did they move it up to like 10 now? I don't know. It's been so many years. But I knew the Boston Marathon's going to be starting soon. And gosh, I wonder how Dick's going to do. I wonder how Dick, Alberto Salazar, Dick, and all this. And Neil's wife said, I have a friend at Kellogg Television. I wonder if they're getting a feed from Boston, the local, whatever, CBS, whatever. So she calls over, and, Neil Graff's wife gets into places that you and I probably, and she got a hold of this guy. And he goes, yeah, I'm sitting there watching it right now. So this dude's sitting over at Kellerland Studio watching the Boston Marathon live, and nobody in South Dakota can see it other than this guy. It's kind of mind-boggling. So she goes, well, and this was getting towards the end, and he goes, well, it's just Beardsley and Salazar. And so I'm standing there, we're standing in the running shop listening to a play-by-play from a guy watching it through the phone to the wife, who's then telling us what she's hearing. And when Dick got gapped with about a half mile to go, it was like, no, Beardsley's falling back. It's like, oh, no, with a half mile to go, when you fall back in a marathon, it's usually, 99.9% of the time, that's all she wrote, and it's like, dang it. And then she goes, wait a minute. And, it's like, what? They're dead even. Just went from like he was back, because if you see the video, go to Duel in the Sun on YouTube, you can watch it. He comes back, he finds that strength, and it's like, and they're rounding the last corner side by side. And I kid you not, I yelled, Dick is gonna win. He's the best downhill runner I've ever seen in my life. The guy just flows. When he runs downhill, he looks like a race walker. Those guys have those swivel hips? Yeah, that's Beardsley. I have rigid hips. My hips don't flow. Dick's just they're just loose. And then she goes, Salazar first, Beardsley second. It's like, what? And and you watch the video. Hey, kudos to Alberto. I mean, he went to the arms, he went to the knees, and he had practiced. He's a track guy. He ran a 10K, world-class 10K the week before. Dick said him and Coach Wires never talked about the finish of marathons. They never worried about the last 200 meters of a marathon, because the thing was going to be over by then. And Dick to this day will say, hey, I got outkicked. And so that, though, and if you, I can't remember, I think on our list of races, after the 82 Boston, Dick came back to Sioux Falls and ran the 10K, the Pepsi 10K. I think it was his first race post-Boston. It was like May 15th, and Boston was, you guys tell me, April what, 19th? It's Columbus Day in Boston. Or
it's around then, isn't it?
Patriots Day or something. So Dick, he came back because I invited him. I said, Dick, we're having a 10K in Sioux Falls. Why don't you guys drive down and stay with us? Yeah. Could you imagine being the race director and you get a guy calling you up and go, hey, Dick Beardsley wants to come and run your 10K. And he's just coming to run. There's no parents' money. There's nothing on the line. My boss asked me, he said, do you think Dick would come to the store, the Athletic Attic, and like just hang out and sign autographs? And I go, Dick. And Dick was like, yeah. There was no like, we'll pay him $1,000. This was back when it was just for the love of running and to promote running. And so Dick showed up, ran the 10K, ran sub 30. I got third. I wanted to get second. Virgil Cheers, my good friend of mine, beat me. It happens. And so we finished first and third. He's hanging out at our house. Joel Brown, who was this Argus leader, came to our house to interview Dick. Huge sports thing. Because Dick is now a celebrity in South Dakota. He spends one semester at SDSU. He's voted Celebrity Athlete of the Year. And, and he didn't even live in the state other than that one semester. And so we adopted him. He's a Minnesota South Dakotan. And he came to the running store, spent the whole afternoon meeting runners after the 10K, signing autographs, talking to people. And I remember Neil said, look, Dick, can I get you anything? Do you need any shoes? And he's like, Dick said, I got New Balance. He goes, my mother-in-law could use a pair of shoes. Neil's like, do you know her size? Help yourself. Pick whatever you want. So like for $50, he had Neil Graff there for the day, or had Dick Beardsley there for the day, drawing people into his store. And so then we go up to Grandma's marathon, and Dick tells, he had committed, he'd run a 2:08, 6 weeks later, he's back to run another marathon, which is, insanity. But he had made a commitment, and there was some money on the line. I don't know if it's a big secret. I think it was like $6,000 for him to show up. And Dick's a man of his word.
That's huge money for 1982, isn't it?
Oh, you think? And it was really good money. And so he's there, and I go up. I got invited up to a free room, free entry and stuff. And my room was way out of town. And when Dick found out, he said, "You come stay with Mary and I." So I stayed with Dick the night before Grandma's at the Radisson, the Round Motel in Duluth. And Mary, it was kind of something really cool she would do for Dick. She would sew the numbers on his singlet. And so she sewed our numbers on our singlets for us. So hand sewed them on. And so he didn't have that ugly pin, and it's always crooked and catching wind and stuff. And so Dick took off. He won the race pretty handily in 2:14. But it wasn't easy. It was a headwind, and it was a hot day. And his Achilles issue kind of started up after that. And then I ran 2:21 and went out slow because of the heat and the headwind. I thought, I'm not going to, I've got a 2:19 now under my belt. I'm not going to try to, break that. I just going to run and see what happens. And ended up running 2:21. I got 10th. I was kind of like, I've always finished in the top 10 of marathons, except in Boston, where it's kind of crazy there. And so got through that, and then ran a bunch of road races all summer, and then went out to Black Hills again. I got a little appearance money to go to the Black Hills Marathon in 1982. And my folks had a cabin out near Rochford. So they were out there. So they came and watched me run the marathon. And I was able to win that. And in that one, it was kind of a steady paced effort. Just ran. I kind of was disappointed. I thought I'd run faster than 2:21 because I'd ran 2:20 there 3 years earlier. It is what it is. And then a month later, I decided, I don't know why. I came back and did Twin Cities. So in that one, went out really fast. I thought, what the hell? It's the last race of the year. I'm going to take a break after this. And so I went to the half in 1:07. It was with the lead group and came back with a 1:14. And so that should tell you how the last half of that marathon went. But I was walking at 21 miles and I was hurting bad. And I thought, this is done. I was not doing well. Oh, there it is. That Minneapolis marathon at the bottom, 2:21. And first place was 2:11. A guy from Norway. I was walking at 21. I was looking for a porta potty, and Dr. Paul Rather, he was a really good marathoner, was sitting on the curb, and I knew him, and he didn't know me. We knew each other, and I said, "Do you know if there's a porta potty here?" And he goes, "No." And he said, and I go, "Well, come on, dude, let's hang in there or something." He goes, "No, I'm done." And he handed me. He goes, "Here, have some of this." And Dr. Rather came up with his own little concoction of tea, honey. I'm not sure what was in it. It was his own little private drink. And I remember taking a couple slugs of this stuff because I didn't care. I was ready for anything. I was done. And I took a few slugs and I said, "Well, come on." And he goes, "No, you go ahead. I'm done." So I started running. And by now, runners had passed me, as I stand there talking to them. And you guys are going to think this is ridiculous, but like within a minute or two, I started feeling better. Well, it's that caffeine, the sugar, the honey, and that drink just must have went right to my brain. And all at once, I'm back. And I started picking,
Amazing, isn't it?
I can catch these guys, and I catch somebody, and you kind of sit on them and go, they're not going that fast. And so you pass, and I ended up getting 8th at 2:21. And I went from walking at 21 to finishing strong. And you just kind of go, wow, lesson learned, nutrition, hydration, you can't, back in the day, we just took that stuff for granted. You thought if you trained hard, you just get out there that day and you just do it.
Mike, let me first stop you for a second because you're talking about this October 3rd, Minneapolis, the Twin Cities Marathon. And, but that's the 18th race of the 1982 year where, Greg, you got to look at this, 2:21 3 times.
These are amazing results. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was, I was on I throw Dick's name out because we're such good friends. We talk all the time and we just love to race. The race scene was the cherry on the dessert. We love training. You have to. If you don't love training, you're not going to do this stuff. But it was like, I think we trained, the racing was like to justify all the training, I guess. And it was just out there always setting goals, trying to, we had a lot of fun racing. And if you didn't do as well as you hoped to do, that just kind of motivated you to maybe check things out and reevaluate. I always like to do a 10K a week before a marathon. And I know nowadays, I don't know what coach's feeling is. I always felt that, racing the shorter distances, I know Rob DiCostello was a great Australian marathoner. He loved to do a fast 5K. When he did a fast 5K, he knew he was ready for a fantastic, 207 marathoner at Boston and stuff like that. And my thing was, I'd always try to find a 10K a week, if not 2 weeks before a marathon. That 5-minute pace makes 5:20 pace feel really, not so bad. I was out on my e-bike yesterday and I rode with some young stud who's about 25. He's just a beast. And I put it in turbo. I'm going 30 miles an hour on my e-bike. I'm pushing about 300 watts of power. I have a power meter. He's sitting on my wheel and drafted me. And he said, we rode about 10 miles like this. I was about ready to puke. I mean, I couldn't drop him. I could not drop him. And we got to the end and he goes, that was so awesome. Because how often do you get to ride it's like riding in a race. And he goes, I was dying back there. And I go, well, I was dying up there. I went out today and rode 200 watts and it felt so much easier. And it's kind of like after you do 300 watts, all at once 200. When you run 200 watts all the time, 200 watts is like work and it becomes like that's your threshold. Well, when you go above your threshold, and that's what these races, I mean, you can't train like you can race. There's no better training than racing. The
Mike,
hour run.
Yeah, you want to talk to us, Mike, about the hour run.
Well, now look, you got to remember, this is 1982. Dick had run 2:08 in April. He shows up at SDSU. This is late August.
So this is a 6-hour field.
This is a 6-hour field. Yeah, that's where we cut our teeth. And we had a stud group of people. Rob Kinnunen, the guy who beat me in the 10K at conference, is the guy directly. You can't really see him directly behind Dick. Behind him is John Merrihew, varsity runner from USD. I'm trying to think. Don Oberle was from Northern State, was in there. So we had about 5 guys that were decent runners. And Dick knew he was going to do 5-minute miles. And I think all of our attitude was, we'll hang with you as long as we can. But, in reality, I think I hung with Dick maybe 3 miles up to maybe the 4th mile. And you just know, and I know Bob Bartling spoke to this, our runs are really good. You can calculate every quarter. That was a 74. That was a 74. That was a 75. You can do the math. It's not that difficult once you kind of see the pattern established.
Were you guys looking at breaking a specific record?
Yeah, 12. We wanted, everybody wanted to try to do 12 miles. And as a team, this was for the national, it was amateur. They had a 1-hour postal where you'd send in your results. And we'd won the year before and we won it that year. I have 2 TAC gold medals, TAC, the Athletic Congress. That's what they were called. I have a bronze medal because I got 3rd that year in the hour run. Now, you got to know not how many athletes do the hour run. I don't want to make it sound like I beat all the best runners in the United States. I did not. But for those who did the hour run, a guy named Ivan Hoff, who ran for Cal Poly SLO, got 2nd. I missed 12 miles by 80 meters.
Oh, wow.
Well, but here's the thing, Greg. I knew it with a mile to go. You can do the math. I needed a 4:41 last mile. And I probably came up with a 4:53, 4:54 last mile. Because I could not take it down to 70-second quarters the last 4. That was way over my threshold. That would have been like, and so it was kind of frustrating.
29 minutes in K pace.
Yeah, you know where you're at. You know what, you're right on the bubble. You're knocking out those 75, 76s, 77s, and all at once you need like 470s. Yeah, it wasn't going to happen. But I thought I need to get as close as I could. So I always say, well, I was 80 yards short of 12 miles. It's 5:01 pace for 12 miles. I got done with that race in 1982. I'm 25 years old. I just ran 12 miles approximately in a 5-minute pace. And the reality, you always think about, I wonder if I could do this for a living. I wonder if I could, Dick did it. Maybe I can do it. And that was a pivotal moment that I couldn't go half the distance at 5-minute miles. Rod ran a 2:11. That's 5-minute miles for 26 miles. And I love to tell, there's the hour run there. My 3rd place, my claim to TAC fame. But, I give people like Rod and Dick, they have a gift. to be able to knock out 5-minute miles for 26 miles, most people would love to run one. I got to where I could do 12. And I'm not saying that's a good thing.
That's very impressive, yeah.
But it puts you into perspective. It's kind of a wake up call. If I was 19 or 20-year-old or 21-year-old and did that, I ran my PR the next year. You always finish a marathon thinking, I think I had a little more in the tank. And I never ran another. I ran in 1988. I gave it one last hurrah. I thought I wanted to try one more time. So I went out to Napa Valley where Dick had ran 2:16 after his Achilles reconstruction, and he got his 88 qualifier at Napa. So I thought, well, I'll go out there, and the race director was very nice to bring me in and all that. And my prep wasn't really good. I had gotten to that point in my age. What was I? 31. I was doing 70 to 80 miles a week, where you need to do 100 to 120. I had, my talent isn't that good. I need the training. And I was teaching school. I had children. I was and Steve Jones had come on the scene and ran Chicago, and he was a 70-mile-a-week marathoner running world record.
Yeah. And
everybody's like, you don't need all those miles. You get hurt. And I could attest to that. So I kind of got in my head, well, I'm going to do quality and do 70, 80-mile weeks. And I've got all this experience and run off memory. Yeah. At about 18 miles, memory and all that experience goes out the window. It's kind of like your bank account. When you're bankrupt, your money's gone. There's nothing. You have to put enough money in the bank. And I didn't have the fitness in the bank. I remember I think I got to the halfway point at Napa, right on 110, like 109.50. And it's like, okay, I have to double this, and as you all know, that doesn't tend to work very well. You want to negative split it, but I was not at that. And again, I think I ran 225, which I was proud of it, that I got through it and didn't give up. But that 1 hour run was kind of the icing on the cake. Brooks did come along after I was at Grandma's is when I got connected with Brooks. Because I was with Dick, I was part of Dick's entourage. We got a limo ride out to the start up at Two Harbors. And in the car was Will Elbers. And Will Elbers was a 2:17 marathoner, and he was the Brooks running rep. He was the guy out recruiting runners. I happened to be in the car with Will Elbers because I was with Dick Beardsley. Otherwise, who knows what might have happened. So as we're riding up to Two Harbors, Dick goes into a zone. Let me tell you, before a marathon, he's all business. And Will was very nice. He respected that. And he just said to Dick, Dick, if there's anything I can ever do to help you. And he was basically saying, can Brooks be of any, can you possibly want to talk to Brooks? And Dick said, nah, I'm good. And he said, well, Mike.
Mike, sorry. Can I hear? This is when Brooks was
in the car, the Brooks rep. And then he goes, Mike, he said, we're starting a running club, a running team of, looking at marathoners. He goes, is this something you might be interested in? And I probably, started salivating and tried not to, and I just said, yeah, I'd be happy. And he goes, I'll tell you what, when you get done, I can't remember. He said, I'll call you, I'll get a hold of you. And he said, we'll, and I said, okay. And I ran 221 that day. And like I said, I got 10th. And so I guess, Will, I don't know how we connected, but he sent me the contract, and it was like, and I have a copy of it. If you ever want me to, there we go. The glory days. 1982. Nice. There's those 18 races behind you there. 1982.
That's awesome. That is so cool.
That was my wife. We were living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and I had the kit. That was the kit. They sent me a kit, and that was a cool thing to get free shoes. I mean, as a runner, that's the kid in the toy store. And they'd send you like 3 pair, different models and stuff. The bad news was they didn't have a racing flat. They did not have a racing flat until Boston of '83. So that year
They had some quite big runners running for them around the end.
They did. They made shoes for Greg Meyer, and they made shoes for was it Randy Thomas?
Rod Dixon was running for them. I know that. And,
they made their shoes. Wolverine Worldwide Hush Puppy was owned Brooks. They didn't have a line of racing flats, and I wasn't good enough to get a custom built pair of shoes. And so I had permission to wear my Nike Mariahs in races, even though I wore the Brooks kit. And they said, look, do not tear the swoosh off.
It happens to this day, doesn't it, guys?
Yeah. They understood. They said, we don't want you at a disadvantage. Do I have to race in training flats? And they said, no, you can wear your racers, but don't disfigure them. A lot of people try to hide it. They tear the swoosh off and color them with a marking pen, or try to they wouldn't let you know they were wearing a Nike shoe. But Brooks is pretty upfront about that. They said, don't do that. We don't want you to do that. But wear the kit. Anytime you're in public, you wear the kit. You wear the jersey. You wear the warm-ups. If you do a talk, you wear the kit, the jersey and stuff. And I said, oh, no problem. And
were you getting
Mike,
what were you getting from them?
Pardon me?
What else was the sponsorship worth?
It was a $1,500 travel stipend.
Okay.
So you picked your races. And so I went to Tampa, I did Gasparilla, I went to Thunder Bay, I went to Boston. That was, they put us up at the Prudential. Talk about 83.
83 Boston.
Well, I get there, and here's the thing. I have that Virgil Cheerdsma, and it's a weird name, Virgil Cheerdsma. He's a kid out of South Dakota who beat me at the 10K that Dick came back and won. I got third. Well, Virgil was second. Virgil's a heck of a really, really good runner. And he wanted to run Boston and had qualified. I can't remember, at Sioux Falls, ran the Sioux Falls Marathon like 2:24 or something. And he got his Boston qualifier. And he goes, I want to come to Boston so bad. But the cost, that's always, runners are not usually wealthy people. And I said, Virgil, I have a room at Boston through Brooks. You get to Boston. Dick did it for me. I'm doing it for you, man. You come and bunk in with me. I don't have a problem with that. He goes, really? Yeah. You just get there, get to the Prudential. We're good, man. So he gets there and he's excited. I'm excited. And I didn't know Brooks also had another runner put in with me. So we were sharing 2 double beds. But that guy had also invited a friend to stay with him. So there were 4 of us. So the other Brooks guy and his buddy slept in one bed. Virgil and I slept in the other. We're fine with it. We're not homophobic. I mean, nobody's, we're all married guys. Nobody snored. Everybody's got along. And so everybody's happy. So we head out. They put you on a bus, as you're well aware. They bus you out to the start. I don't know, we're on bus number 48. I think you have a bus pass, you show it, you get on. And Dr. George Sheehan, you're familiar with Dr. George Sheehan? Dr. George Sheehan's on our bus. It's kind of like a celebrity. So we're sitting there and he's about 3 benches in front of us. And people are like, hey, Dr. Sheehan, I didn't know who, I've heard of him. And people are high-fiving him, wishing him luck and talking. And, he's a celebrity. And finally I said to him, because he had been at SDSU at a lecture series, I wish I remembered it. They paid him $6,000 to come in and talk for an hour at one of these lecture series. It was about the big auditorium at SDSU campus. I drove up from Sioux Falls. A bunch of us did. We wanted to hear Dr. Sheehan. We've read his books. We see his article in Runner's World. So I was there for his presentation at SDSU about a year earlier. Now I'm on a bus with him going to the start of the Boston Marathon. So, it's a 26-mile drive. And so I kind of waited, and I finally had my opportunity because I am kind of a chatty Cathy, if you haven't figured that out. And I said to him, hey, Dr. Sheehan. And he kind of looks back. I go, when are you going to come back and visit us again in South Dakota? And he goes, South Dakota. Are there any runners in South Dakota? And everybody on the bus kind of laughing. And I go, well, there's 2 of us, like that. And he goes, and he just like smiled. And Virgil goes, that son of a, so he just dissed us. And so I thank Dr. George Sheehan for the motivational lecture he gave, because we were like, yeah, we've got runners in South Dakota. And so we got out to the start. They keep you there. You get there an hour and a half before the start. It's a cool, rainy day, perfect for running a marathon. Not so perfect for hanging out at a marathon where everything's packed out. You have to go to the bathroom. You go out in the woods because the porta potty lines are so long. And it's like landmines. You see little piles of toilet paper everywhere because everybody's already been out there squatting in the woods. So you don't want that on your shoes. So you're kind of like, okay, people would mark their spots. All right. Finally, because of our qualifying times, I don't think Virgil did. I had a 102 was my number. The top 125 get in the first corral. Pretty cool. You walk around with that number on, people get out of your way. And so, it's just kind of a cool deal. They respect Boston people, know this stuff. So you get in the corral and, there's everybody, it's 1983. And this was the qualifying for the World Championships in Oslo that year. The only 2 Americans not there were Alberto Salazar and Dick Beardsley, because Dick was injured. And I don't think Alberto had any interest in running the marathon at Onslow at the World Championship. So it was a who's who of running.
Also, Mike, 83 at Boston would have almost been the height of the popularity of,
it was huge. Yeah, I'm lucky. I have a picture of an overhead shot of the start. Like we're probably like 25 or 50 meters, 150 yards down the road, and somebody in a cherry picker took a picture. If I knew there were that many runners behind me, I'm not sure I would want to be in front of that group. I mean, it was 8,000 runners, whatever it was. Well, we take off, and as you guys know, it's insane. You know, you go through the mile in 5 flat, and you're like being buried by runners or flying by you, and it's a downhill start. And we finally, Virgil and I find each other. We kind of were together, and so we're kind of buddied up. And again, you know, this kind of we're there for each other. You know, we're buddies, we're friends. We're each there for ourselves, but we're going to help each other if we can. And so and I remember at about 8, 9, 10 miles, Joan Benoit, we caught her. She was on world record pace. She was on 2:16 pace through the first half.
Wow.
She went through in 1:08.23. I went through in 1:08 flat. She was 23 seconds behind me at the halfway point. And when we caught her at 10 miles, Virgil and I are running side by side, and they have a motorcycle camera on Joan Benoit. And they're like right in front of us, 25 meters in front of us. And I told Virgil, like, you know, we're trying to relax. I always like to disassociate the first part of a marathon, try not to focus, because your energies, you try to save that, you know, when you need it, and just try not to think about it. And so I turned to Virgil, I go, Virgil, people back in South Dakota are going to see a video of this someday, and they're going to say, those guys are running with the women, because they don't understand how good Joan Benoit is. I mean, she's going to win the gold medal a year later. And I go, look, we have to do something here. And I'm not sounding misogynistic or sexist, but I said, let's either drop back out of camera range or let's pass her. And Virgil goes, pass her. So we picked up the pace and got ahead of her. And she was 23 seconds behind us at the halfway point. You could hear the roar of the crowd as we go by a spot, and people are like, hey, you have a good job. And then you'd hear this, rah, you know, because she's a hometown girl. And we knew where she was. And we'd look at each other and go, oh my God, she's right behind us, you know, because you'd hear the roar. And I met Joni years later at the Beardsley running camp, and I thanked her for scaring me all the way to the finish line. And so people are flying. We go through in 1:08 flat at the half. I'm feeling decent. And I remember runners passing us, and Virgil goes, should we go with them? And I said, Virgil, no. And I take credit on this one, because this is not my first marathon. I said, bud, we are running 2:16 pace right now. And I'm a 2:19 marathoner, and you're a 2:24 marathoner. Let's just stay comfortable. Let's just stay here. And he's like, all right. So we stayed comfortable, and we got to Heartbreak Hill. And I've heard so many stories about it that it's not, you won't even notice it. Or, oh my God, good, you know, be ready for Heartbreak Hill. And so you kind of don't, I did not enjoy it. I ran a 5:56 mile up a Heartbreak Hill. I remember my split from 20 to 21, I think it is, and Virgil left me, and I don't blame him. I was dying. I mean, I got up there and I was not feeling good, and I felt bad because Virgil had left me. I was feeling sorry for myself. And, you know, it's so surreal. And as you get, the crowd there is unbelievable. And I was still far enough up in the front runners, I mean, that there wasn't anybody around me. I was running up Heartbreak Hill kind of alone. So people are like, yeah, go, you can do it. And I crested the top, and there is a cop. I think he's traditional. I don't know, this is bad. He would stand there year after year and go, you have now reached the top of Heartbreak Hill. He would tell runners that. And I swear, maybe I imagined it, but no, I topped it. And there were people would hand, you know, they didn't have like real aid stations, but I remember somebody handed me a sponge. They have people out there with sponge. Sponge. You just grab it. And I remember I wore a painter's hat because Brooks gave, after Beardsley's 82, every shoe company had a painter's hat. You know, Bill Rogers wore white gloves. Everybody had white gloves. Dick Beardsley wore a painter's cap. Brooks had a painter's cap. Well, I took my painter's cap off and I squeezed the water on my head because I was just like, I'm hot. I'm not feeling good. And I looked, and it was like the crowd was all staring at me. Now, that's what I imagined. And I remembered I took my hat and I flinged it into the crowd, and they went nuts. I mean, the people were just like, yeah, you know, they start cheering, you know. And it was like Kip Keano used to do that, throw his hat to the infield when he was going to go into a sprint. So I just took off. You know, I'm feeling like I got it. And I kind of could see Virgil, his singlet, you know, up ahead. And that was my target. And I got back by about 22, 23. I was on his shoulder, and I go, Virgil, I'm back. And he's like, oh, dude. He goes, and I go, dude, we just keep rolling. And the crowd now, there's room for two of us. There's two of us running side by side. And like he said, your ears hurt. And this is, you can't capture this. You have to, it's such a great experience. And we finally got to the 25.2, and it says 25.2 on the road. It's the sit-go sign.
Yeah.
And Dick told me, when you see the sit-go sign, Mike, you got a mile to go. So that's the point where you got a mile to make, pivotal moment here. And I told Virgil, I was looking at my time, 2:19:07 was the qualifier. And I looked and I knew we were under that, but not by a lot. And, in that last mile, and I turned to Virgil, I go, Virgil, we got to go. It's a mile to go. If you got it, you got it. We got to go. And I took off and I didn't look back, and at this point it's every man for himself. And we were taking turns, we were helping each other, encouraging each other. But with a mile to go, it's like, man, we got to go. And I took off and I think I passed a couple runners. And I remember turning the corner onto, I can't remember, Bolton Street, whatever, the last 200 yards to the finish. And I could see the timer on the clock and it said 2:18, 2:18:01, 2:18:02. And I'm focused, man. And I in 2:18:26. And the first thing I did as I came to a stop, I turned around and I was looking for Virgil. And as he was coming, I saw him turn the corner. I'm looking at the clock. I'm looking at him. I'm looking at the clock. I'm looking at him. And he ran 2:18:49, I think. 2:18:45. I beat him by like 19 seconds. So, I went that last mile. But I was more concerned about, and the minute he crossed the finish line, and I started saying, you did it, you did it. We grabbed each other like little schoolgirls and started jumping up and down. And we were crying. I am not making this up. And I'm not embarrassed to tell you that. It was that kind of an emotional moment. Because, as a runner, you have these lifelong goals. You set goals years in advance. Boston qualifier 2:19:07, when that was announced, well, that's the goal. You got to get to the Olympic trials. And so you got to train for that. And to finally see that culmination and to see a good friend who was with you the whole way do it as well, and that night, Virgil and I walked around the city. We tried to get into the, what's the famous bar? The lounge. That all the runners used to go to. Yeah, Elliott Lounge. Yeah, good luck trying to get into the Elliott Lounge Boston Marathon night. But, we just rocked around the city in just kind of in a glow.
Was it your first Boston, Mike, as well, to make it?
What's that?
Had you run Boston before?
No,
that as well,
only time I ever did it. And,
very cool.
If anybody ever says, I don't know, do you think I should do Boston? It's like, are you insane? Yes. Yes, you should do it. And enjoy it.
Absolutely, it's one
and
of
enjoy
those,
it. Because the people there, it's unique, and there's a mystique about it. Finished, Boston. I had a great lead up. I don't know if anybody cares about this kind of stuff, but I was training. I was in grad school at SDSU, the fall of '82 to the summer of '83, and so I was training with the cross country team that fall. Excellent. How much fun is that? Rob Byer, the Brant boys, Joe Chamberlain, Dan Carlson, Digger Carlson was there. Yeah, and so perfect training, 20 milers, running intervals with those guys. Indoor, I trained, I was pretty smart, didn't run on that indoor track hardly ever. And I did go down to the Dome in March. I wanted to do a 10K and I was going to go out to Black Hill State. They were going to do a 10K on the track in March and it got blizzarded out. God, go figure. And so I went to the Dome at USD and ran a 2-mile. And I'm bragging a little bit, but I ran the first mile was a 4:38. Then I finished with a 4:35. I ran a 9:13 and I beat Digger. Digger got second. I kind of jumped him with a mile to go and I got a gap and Digger was coming, but I held him off. And then I went to Minneapolis and did the Inclement 25. It's in March. Why do you think they call it? It's 25K. And Barney Klecker showed up. I don't know if you know, Barney was a 2:16 marathoner, Joe Klecker's dad. Everybody knows about Joe Klecker now. What is he? 27, 23, 10K, 13:06, 5K. And his dad showed up and I beat him. I got first and Barney was second. And so I knew I was in really good form coming into April. And then it was just a matter of getting there. Okay.
So first, hey, what's your favorite Foo Fighters song?
That's not a fair question.
Okay, both live or right recorded. So now, you can go.
I've gotten into this ultra cycling and I have Foo Fighters on my MP3 player. That should tell you how old I am. Actually, now I still use one. Yeah. I Bluetooth. And when you're at 3 a.m. in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota, riding across the state in the gut check race across South Dakota, and the Foo Fighters comes on, it will get you through. I tell you, that stuff, that music, it turns some part of my brain on. There's a one-way motorway. Times like these, I'm a one-way motorway. I mean, I find a running or cycling meaning in every one of the songs. It was like some runner had something. This is for runners here. This is it. The Pretender, All My Life, DOA. Those are all classics. People go, what is he talking about?
Knew this.
Go to Pandora, go to Foo Fighters. They have like 200 and some songs listed. Just play the top 10, and then put those on your Bluetooth, your iPad, or whatever it is. And
that's great advice, Mike. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great advice. Thanks for sharing that with us.
That's a good question.
So another question for you: would you like to see a South Dakota-based post-collegiate running squad?
Yeah, we kind of always dreamt of something. Neil Graff sponsored runners through his running shop. And basically what he would do is give them a singlet, and he would give them a nice discount on any apparel, and nobody else was giving him anything. And so there were a whole bunch of runners, the Prairie Striders, I have so many stories of Prairie Striders. One fast one, Dick and I, when we sucked it at nationals that year, the next day we went out on a 20-mile run in Indiana, Pennsylvania. Most guys, national meet, season's over, let's cash it in. Dick and I got up and went out and did a 20. And as we were coming back to the hotel, Cal Poly SLO, who drilled everybody that day, won this national championship. They had guys like Jim Schenkel. They had Mitch Kingery, who was the high school marathon record holder in those days. They had Eric Holst, who passed away, unfortunately, from a brain. They had a group of superstars, Ralph Cerna, all these great runners. They were loading up their van, getting ready to leave. And we came over and we congratulated them. That's what you do to your competitors. Nice job. You guys ran fantastic. And, I think they figured out we were South Dakota State. We told them we ended up second. They were like, I remember they were kind of coy. A little bit. They're West Coast guys. What do you expect? And I almost wanted to say to them, this is Dick Beardsley and I'm Mike Dunlap. Remember those names. We didn't say that, because that's kind of like it's calling your home run shot years in advance or something like this. But I wonder if any of them figured out that damn Dick Beardsley guy ran 208. We used to run against him. But Dick and I came back to state. Bob Bartley says, we got a race down in Kansas City. Schlitz beer, Schlitz Light 25K. And Randy Fisher. The three of us jumped in Bob's car. I swear it was like a huge, like Oldsmobile or a Ford LTD or something. And Bob had bags of peanuts back there. And we'd munch on peanuts. And the four of us drove to Kansas City. Long story short, it was late October, maybe early November. It's like 35 degrees. Bob Busby, former SDSU runner, lives there, 216 marathoner. And he's there at the race. And he sees, and we get out, we have our SDSU singlets on. And it's 35. We're good to go, man. There's no arm warmers. They didn't exist. There's no long winter underwear. We didn't wear that crap to run. We're ready. We'll warm up once the race starts. Well, these guys in Kansas City, it's like freezing for them. And they show up with the long winter underwear and they've got like turtlenecks under their jerseys and stuff. And I remember them saying, like Bob Busby said, oh, these guys from South Dakota think they're so tough or something to that effect. Again, whenever somebody throws you that, what the best response is? Well, let's see how things turn out, shall we? You don't have to say anything. Let's prove it with our legs. Dick won the race. Him and a guy named Fred Carnahan, who's a really good runner, they dueled and Dick just drilled him. I ended up third. Randy Fisher ended up 10th. And Bob was, Chester Cat grin from ear to ear because I'm not sure there was a team title, but we had it if there would have been. Dick qualified then to go to the national championship by winning that race. And he went down there and he proposed to his wife at the national Schlitz. Those are the days. I ran the Coors Light 10K. We used to have the Bud Light 10K in Rapid City. The Schlitz beer. I mean, all these beer companies want to associate themselves with, hey, you run, you sweat, you drink some beers.
Yeah.
Let's get on this marketing tour. Then Pepsi and all that kind of stuff. But Bob, so many great Prairie Strider stories. He talked Dick into wearing a Prairie Strider singlet at the Lincoln 10, that statehood days. Dick had already signed with New Balance. Dick had some splaining to do. You're running for a shoe company. Bob Bartley got him to wear a Prairie Striders, and there was no team title. I can understand if we were going down there and there was like, you got to wear the singlet to count towards the team. I don't think maybe there was. He got first. I got eighth.
Of Bob Barlang. Yeah.
Bob, you didn't say no to Bob. I mean, Bob's like the godfather. No. We had his 75th birthday party, and everybody showed up.
We were at that 75th birthday, weren't we, Marty? I remember
they had a birthday party. Dick Beardsley, I showed up, the Bills boys, Brant's, and I think he's pushing 95 now. And
he would be, wouldn't he? Because it was 2001. I remember. Yeah, it was at the Starlight Inn, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I and I know Dick's schedule, well, with COVID, nobody's got anything else to do. We need to come back for some events, some alumni. I know Rod we'd all have a kick out of it. And we follow, I hope any SDSU runners, if anybody's still watching this, if the alumni are out there, we don't always, send a note. Some people do. I think that's cool. I know Brad Court is like, I just trust Brad to let me know what's going on with SDSU track and cross country, because does a great job of it. But when we see these guys' performance and the ladies, we're smiling. We're nodding our head, we're proud. And we go, yeah. We'd like to think, I have a brick in that long line, that road of SDSU history. Yeah, I got a brick in that road somewhere.
Absolutely,
cool.
Yeah. These I know that these young the guys now. They're well aware of the people that, paved the way before.
Gary Bentley. Gary Bentley, Scott Underwood, Greg Halling, Don Solzvig. I'm layman guys. These are guys in the early 70s. Our group came on along in the late 70s. And then you had those damn Marines in the early 80s, there's Rob Byers and I can't think of the other guy, the steeplechaser.
Joe Flannery.
Joe Flannery, yeah.
Rod, and then the Massman boys. Oh my God, talk about some studs. And then Rod, when Rod came, that was so exciting for us, because he could have probably gone anywhere. And the fact that he chose SDSU, that really was exciting. He was 10 years behind us, but we were following that, all the time. And so I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. I think the promotion of running to the Midwest, and especially, the SDSU connection, that there's so many runners that have that. The USD people are probably not happy about it, but that's okay. My daughter teaches at USD, and my son-in-law, so I have to throw that in there. But they'll see this.
No, Mike, thanks so much for really just telling your story, and just all these stories are great. This has been awesome. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
I hope somebody can glean something out of it of value, and I'm not sure.
They're fantastic stories. The motivation that people can get from
that's the thing, and maybe it's my age, and I'll be quiet after this, but I really want to tell young people, high school, college, don't take advantage of it. It really is a unique time of your life, and work with your coach, work with your teammates. And I can't say this enough, be a friend to somebody. It's a pat on the back. You'll never know what effect a hand on the back, a pat on the shoulder. Hey, would you like to come along on a run with us? For some people, that's a pivotal moment for them. You might say, it's no big deal. I never thought anything of it. To them, that was the turning point that maybe took them down a path they wouldn't have gone otherwise. And you don't know where those are at. So don't pass them up if you see it. If you see that little glimmer of an opening, jump right in. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Pivotal Running Podcast. Make sure to visit our website, pivotalrunning.com, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Spotify, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or if you simply would tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. Thanks.